Beth, you got placed on mute. There you go.
Oh no, I don't know how I did that. Sorry. um, so what I was saying was that these targets for extortion are not, big crime lords or people with a lot of means. They're really just normal people with their families, with their, running farms or small businesses. They're not people that have a lot of means. And so the extortion is particularly damaging if you really don't have the ability to pay. Central Americans often face very large obstacles in pleading their asylum cases in America. There are differences between acceptance rates of asylum seekers based on where they came from. We saw this get much worse under the Trump administration when in 2018, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions disallowed asylum claims for gang violence and domestic violence. Those being the strongest claims that were coming out of these areas and very credible claims of their lives being at risk. To have those be disallowed as a basis for claiming asylum was very damaging. You can see this is a tool provided by a group called TRACK, which tracks the various immigration statistics and especially asylum, showing how the court was granting asylum rights. Just in 2018, you see this sharp drop. And that line right there in the middle is the point where Jeff Sessions changed the policy regarding gang violence and domestic violence as basis for asylum. So you can see that it was a really dramatic drop off in the amount of people that were able to win their asylum cases after they made it here. There is also some variance based on the types of asylum claims that people have, but to give you kind of a rough overview of the odds of winning your asylum case, this infographic here, see it as 100%. Out of these asylum seekers, 100 asylum seekers from Central America applying, without 18 to 20% of those that have a lawyer will be granted asylum. So those are the folks there in yellow. Only 2.225%, depending on their type of case, without a lawyer will be granted asylum. So you can see that there's some huge uphill battles to even win your court case once you're here. And that's after you've made this really dangerous journey to get here. So I want to talk a little bit about the more hopeful side of things, which is the community response, especially here in Phoenix, where it has really been incredible. So every day, it's important to know that every day we have asylum seekers being released in Arizona. Mostly they're being released in Tucson and Phoenix, but sometimes they're even being released in other communities around Arizona, including we've seen them released in Yuma, in some of our other like border towns. Our border towns with California, like Blythe and Indio, more on the California side, but mostly Tucson and Phoenix are receiving these folks. And they're being processed through ICE holding facilities, and then generally released at Greyhound stations or bus stations. These are people that came from all over the world. They have come through an arduous journey to escape from violence and persecution and extreme poverty. And they've often sacrificed everything. They've scrapped together money for years and years to make this journey and to try to bring their children or themselves to a safer, better future. Almost all of them have some type of US-based family here that they're planning to join. There's almost always been somebody who kind of laid a path for them and is like, I can help you get started. I can give you a couch to sleep on. Let's get you here. And they can stay with them while their asylum case is considered. So in Phoenix, what we saw is this huge response from community groups and faith groups turning out, showing up first directly at the Greyhound station to offer people food, to offer their cell phones. When I first saw this happening, it was in 2014, and we were receiving roughly 350 to 400 people a day at the Greyhound station. And we would just show up and we'd say, here's my cell phone. Call who you need to call. Do you need help figuring out how to buy the tickets? What, do you need diapers? Do you need food? What can we help with? And we were literally just operating aid out of the Greyhound station. Over time, the community networks grew and expanded, and we started first advocating for asylum seekers to be released directly to churches and other community spaces around the valley instead of the Greyhound station. And we started opening up our homes to receive folks in our homes. And so many of us in the valley hosted people in our own houses, to make sure that they had a safe place to sleep, to get a shower and a hot meal before they began their journey. The number of asylum seekers that were arriving on the US southern border dramatically escalated at the end of 2018, around October 2018. And the community networks that we had been able to build that had been providing the support were very strained to the point of not being able to meet the need. So what happened is that the IRC and other community partners of ours stepped up to respond to this humanitarian crisis in multiple locations across the border. In early 2018 or 2019, we began to have a lot of pop-up shelters happening all over the valley. So we saw churches opening up their spaces. We saw community spaces that had been, used for other types of organizations now becoming host locations. And the IRC collaborated with St. Vincent de Paul to open a pop-up shelter in the corner of their dining hall at their large campus. Between October 2018 and June 2019, this community-wide effort served more than 40,000 newly arrived asylum seekers in Phoenix. At the pop-up shelter that we ran, just between January and June, we served almost 7,000 asylum seekers. And that was, a folding table in the corner of a dining hall. So you can imagine how many people had to be involved to make this kind of work possible and how strong these communication networks had to be. So here's a couple of images I just pulled to show sort of some of the images from the pop-up shelters. This one in the top left is the gym at North High School that we would use sometimes on weekends, and then we'd have to be out again by Monday because, of course, the kids would be back, right? Some families carrying their kids and getting ready to depart. And then there's kind of our folding table set up there at the St. Vincent de Paul dining hall. You can see it was a very sophisticated setup. So in July of 2019, the IRC was able to open the Welcome Center, which is the first 24/7 asylum seeker shelter in Phoenix. We were fortunate to collaborate with Phoenix Elementary School District 1. They had a retired elementary school, the Ann Ott School, that is right under the flight path of the airport, which for us was very convenient because we take a lot of people to that airport. And they had not been using it for 12 or 13 years. So we moved into that space, rehabilitated it, and turned it into a shelter. So for fun, because we're on the hopeful side of the conversation, I wanted to show you guys some of the before and after pictures because it took a lot of elbow grease to get to where we're at now. And I think it's a good example of what this community's been able to achieve. So here's some of our early pictures of like the cafeteria space. It's actually labeled the cafetorium. So if you went to school in the 90s, that sounds like a typical made up school word, right? You can see that it is in really great clean shape there. We were able to rehab that foosball table actually thanks to some community members who really love foosball, and they replaced all of our broken and missing soccer players, and that is still in the cafeteria and a huge hit. But you can see that that space looks very different now, a lot more welcoming, a lot cleaner, which was all of our elbow grease, and just a completely transformed space. Our hallways and corridors were super creepy. All of the lights were burned out, and there were all of these wires hanging from the ceiling, and there was so much storage in those spaces. You can see one of our team members from the Welcome Center there looking a little spooked while she's walking down the hallway. And now they're full of flowers and papel picado and our murals. We've really been able to transform these spaces so that it's really bright and colorful and welcoming in the Welcome Center. Our children's space, when we first saw this room, we got really excited about all of the children's furniture that was in it. And we asked the school district, please leave all of this. We will use it. We'll transform this. So this room turned into this, which is just dramatic transformation. We've got a beautiful mural painted in there by one of our on-site specialists. We rebuilt the loft that was in there. We had to locate all the hardware, and then we had to figure out how it was supposed to actually be built. So that was fun. And we've had some wonderful partnerships with groups like Save the Children to really outfit this room with a lot of good sensory and therapeutic toys. So this room that you're seeing is our big kid room. And then this is the little kid room with brand new plush carpet donated from one of our partners, and just like a lot of fun little kid toys so that the babies and toddlers can play and not get run over by the big kids. We also have our intake room and our travel room. Everything is really bright. We really like color, as you can tell. we really did a lot of painting. We have a brand new playground out in the back that we rehabbed over the last summer. You can see our little soccer field. This is the toddler side of it. The big kids side of it is still waiting for the mulch. So I'll show more pictures at some point in the future when you can see that all laid out. And we just built a community garden out back behind our cafeteria. We've got lots of good winter crops coming up. And then the residents on site all helped us paint these concrete pavers that we are laying in between the beds. So that's the Welcome Center. That's where we are now. the question becomes, what do we do next, right, as a community? So for those that have stayed really close to asylum seeker stuff, which I know would be very difficult to do in a year with so many things in the headlines, there is a lot of hope right now on our horizon. We've seen during 2020, we saw a sharp decrease in the number of asylum seekers that were able to cross the border because of some very restrictive policy changes, because of CDC orders on the border against, to protect folks from COVID. But what we've also known is that those families are still coming. They're still in need. They're waiting on the other side of the border, and they're asking for that assistance. And we haven't been able to easily provide it when they can't get across. We are looking at now what looks like a very strong commitment to restoring that asylum process. This process that has existed, since the Geneva Conventions outlined the need for asylum is going to be restored again. And so we're going to start seeing families come across again. And actually, in the last month, we are already seeing a huge increase in families starting to go back in. We are working together as a community to prepare our response to that, because even though we've been able to serve lots of folks in the past, we have never done it under a pandemic, right? But what I can tell you is that this community is so strong and so capable and resilient. And I am continuously just overwhelmed by how much we can accomplish when we work together. Jews for Justice and Eddie have been like our strongest partners in all of this. And like, how do we figure out this next obstacle? That's the phase that we're at now. So I really think that this is a great time if you're just learning about asylum, or if you're trying to find a way to plug in. This is a really great time to find a way to plug into the effort and begin this restoration process as we start to see more asylum seekers coming through. I've got some contact info in here. That's my email address, so you can hit me up directly if you'd like to. I'm a little slow to answer. I'm a little busy, but I will get back to you. But we also have lots of ways to contribute to the Welcome Center. And we are building out various types of volunteer activities, not just through the Welcome Center, but also through all of our community partners. So if you are looking for contact lists, volunteer opportunities, or ways to get involved that, honor your risk level that you self-evaluated, we will have lots of ways to contribute. So that is what I have to bring you guys all up to speed. I wanted to open it up to questions and feedback and ideas, and also invite Eddie into the conversation. And I see Jen Buck is on the call too, has also been a huge supporter of asylum seekers locally and probably has lots of other great details to add. So love to open it up for discussion.
Thank you so much, Beth. Wow, that was so good, especially for folks who are really like diving into how to provide assistance for asylum seekers. And before I really start to talk about our work here, I would love to shout out some people that are on this call, because I feel like without their assistance, a lot of the over 40,000 asylum seekers that we assisted would never be possible. One of those people is my great friend Jen Buck here, who out of nowhere built an entire system that like really ran on people power and collaboration with big NGOs and small community organizations, down to people who were literally like, we're gonna make this happen. So Jen Buck, a huge shout out. I also want to give a shout out to one of our fellows who's on here, who really ran our fellow collaboration to help asylum seekers. Her name is Morgan, who took on the challenge of providing toys and getting challah bread to asylum seeking families during this holiday, which I heard was a huge success, right, Beth?
It was wonderful. Thank you, Morgan.
I love that. We were able to provide toys for folks during their respected holiday. And that really makes our work feel fulfilling. And in Judaism, we talk about the mitzvah that should really be the spark and light of hope that dispels the darkness. Sometimes it feels like in our own Judaism and in our own Torah and Torah analysis, when we hear the words tikkun olam, repair the world, it may feel overwhelming. It may feel like we're like, Jesus, how are we going to make this happen? How are we going to collaborate to help so many people? I remember days where I would be in the Greyhound Center passing out hygienic kits with folks from the IRC, helping Beth get transportation. I remember days where, in collaboration with Uri Litzedek, Arizona Jews for Justice, I remember looking at Jen and saying, we're going to take another 300 people. Can we take another 300 people? Sure, we're already at 600. What's another 300 look like? those days that really make our work feel like it's worth it. You know, changing those worlds is it's really what it's about. Today, we were blessed to send a bus because of the policies in place of the Remain in Mexico policy, which unfortunately leaves people stranded from being able to seek a legal asylum based off of our constitution, leaves them stranded in Mexico. So we were blessed to pack a bus today and send it down to Mexico, and to provide some of the shelters down there that are in desperate need with some assistance of how we can really help out and how we can make a difference. So we are beyond blown away and thankful as we talk about the amazing work that the IRC does. I really wanted to take a step back and almost thank everybody and kind of be in awe of our work that we were able to help more than 40,000 families, more than 40,000 families. And I know my friend Jen made a Facebook group for some of those families to stay in touch with, and to see their Facebooks where their kids are going to school, where their kids are seeing snow for the first time. Wow, that's just beautiful to us. Jen, I don't know if you want to share a couple of words on onto the collaboration and speaking on how the community has come together. And then Morgan, maybe if you can talk about how the collaboration within the Jewish community and how all that came together with Jews for Justice Fellowship.
Sure, sure, I can do that. Thank you, Eddie, for your thoughtful words. I think that it's just, amazing that after we all just scrambled to get things put together to help these people, that the same community is now coming together and working as one solid unit. And we are looking for people who are willing to, you know, pitch in somehow, whether that is donating, clothing or some of your time to translate over the phone, help with travel arrangements. There are ways to still stay involved when it comes to, helping people now. Like you heard earlier when Beth was speaking, it's a very different world right now with COVID. And so we're all having to be more creative. And it's amazing to see all of the different groups now coming together to create a plan so that we're not scrambling and we're not, feeling like we're alone. We're all working as one cohesive unit. And it's an honor to be a part of all of this again.
Thank you so much. And then I really also would love to hear some words from Morgan because so many children were able to have toys, were able to have a warm challah loaf for their respected holidays. And I really would love her to share a little bit about how that collaboration worked and how we were able to, raise the funds for the challah, raise the funds for the toys and truly make it all come together from part of our fellowship. Morgan.
Yeah, thank you. I just, I guess in Judaism, because this is a Jewish fellowship that I'm a part of, it's social justice and being, active in helping the world and the people in the world is like so important, which I think is why, we felt so moved to actually get this whole thing together and make it work. And it really, what it came down to was just like, who do we know? Like what each person knows somebody that can do something. So, I feel like a lot of times organizations, when you try to go help, it's just like, oh, well, we need donations. Like if you're looking on their website, give us a monetary donation. And right now, this year, not everyone can do that. It was about finding ways to have people do like in-kind donations that they could give, and really just reaching out to our networks and seeing who, if one person can just bring one small thing, if we get 100 people bringing one small thing, then we have 100 things, to put it simply. So it really was just about, who do we know and what can those people do? And in the end, it really came together really well. And we had a lot of folks from outside of Arizona too, because we were relying heavily on our social networks. And a lot of folks from outside of Arizona were donating things and helping out as well, which was really cool to see. So.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Again, huge shout out for the collaboration to be able to bring such beautifulness, especially in the week of Hanukkah, where we were focusing on really being that light that dispels darkness. Truly, it's what keeps us going, right? To be able to assist folks in the time of so much darkness, of so much unrest, to be able to provide a smile to folks. I feel like that is truly what repairs the world. Huge thank you. So now we're going to move into the discussion Q&A side of things, and I'll start this off with my question to Beth. Really, can you walk us down through how does the Welcome Center look to plan to take in people, knowing that we're still in a pandemic and we're still kind of on phase one of this pandemic, and then being centered in Arizona, we know how there's been kind of a unproductive response from our officials. So how does the Welcome Center look to provide safety measures and such?
Perfect. Yeah. So we, at the beginning of COVID, we knew right away that we needed to figure out some protocols to protect everybody's health and safety, because the service we're providing, even with less people arriving, is just so crucial that we have, the ability to continue to serve folks. We can't just see people be released at a Greyhound station and half the time not know what city they're in. It's just not humane. And so we immediately worked together. Fortunately, the IRC has a lot of global health experience. So I actually ended up being able to talk to the person who coordinated our Ebola response worldwide and say, help me develop some protocols for the Welcome Center. We drafted them up, we implemented them very early. We worked hard to make sure that we had PPE. Even when PPE was really hard, what we did was we did a call out for, if you're at home and you're a volunteer and you can't come in now, make masks. Send us your masks, send us little kid size masks, right? And, we've really been able to stay ahead of the needs. At the beginning of COVID, it was a little scary. I was ordering things way in advance because you didn't know if they were going to ever come. Certain things like Lysol wipes were like the holy grail, trying to hunt down these Lysol wipes and get them to actually be delivered. So we just stocked and prepped and rebuilt our systems around, how do we add more space between people? We assign seats in the cafeteria so that you're not having somebody get up and somebody else sits right back down before it's wiped down. We're wiping down tables and, clearing out spaces is constantly. And it really has worked. We have served hundreds of folks since COVID started. We have not had any clients get sick at all passing through the center. We've received two clients that were COVID positive, that were released positive, and we've been able to collaborate with our Maricopa County Department of Health to provide care to them. And our staff has been healthy and safe. So we've really been very fortunate, but also we've been working very hard to maintain that. Now, as we're coming into a time when we're hoping for this huge restoration of the asylum process, our protocols need to be writ large. They need to be shared with the community. And we have to also think about, as numbers increase, what can we do remotely? That we, just like Jen referred to, like doing phone calls to sponsors to help arrange the tickets is something you could totally do from home. If you're a fluent Spanish speaker, hit us up. I know that Jen will put you in a phone bank. Like, that is the mindset that we're all in. Working with Maricopa County Department of Health, and we're getting testing arranged to be on site. We're working to find, the right safe places for people to quarantine. It's really a whole nother layer that we have to add to these kind of services, but I really feel like everything is possible if we're committed to doing it. And it doesn't mean that we're going to stretch ourselves past what's realistic, but it does mean that we say we can do this if we have XYZ. And the biggest thing is this network, this community-based response is what makes it possible. We go back to our network and we say, I can't do it without this. And somebody else, just like Jen said, somebody else raises their hand and says, actually, I have that, or I could get that, or I can make that phone call. And it really, you don't know until you ask. If we did not have such a committed community here in Phoenix to this kind of support, I don't know how we would be facing this down, but it feels very doable because of the response that we've had and this that is built for years and years. I'm really grateful for these networks.
Thank you. Another question that we have here is, what are some challenges and some pluses that you see with the upcoming administration?
I think that some challenges are going to be really restoring that asylum process is going to be difficult because a real legislative wall has been built. It's not one policy or one process. It's so many tiny processes that have made it more and more difficult for asylum seekers to come across and to really get a fair legal process. So dismantling those things and restoring the process to make sure that we really have an equitable process is going to be difficult and time consuming. I'm very, very grateful for the many legal advocates across the southern border that are working to help identify those obstacles and address them, and that have been highlighting them in the courts and helping try to restore things. Um, Things that I'm looking forward to in 2018, it felt like every community doing this work was an island. It felt like we were very isolated. We didn't have connections with each other. We knew that this work was happening in other cities, but we were too busy to even come up for air, let alone reach out to each other. Through the UN High Council of Refugees, I was able to connect to border shelters all across the border in the time since 2018, 2019. And now what I see is a thriving community of border shelters. We recently formed a border shelter coalition, and we have been collaborating since 2019. So now when somebody sees something happening in El Paso, everybody all across the southern border knows, and we share information. We're able to share resources. I really think that that puts us in a much better position to serve folks better and to make sure that we all have all the information we need to do well. We've also seen historically in the past that sometimes when there's a lot of asylum seekers trying to get across, that folks will be released in spaces like Yuma or Blythe or Indio or Las Cruces without any services. And that was really difficult for those rural communities that didn't have the services in place and had no preparation time. And I know in Las Cruces, they were releasing people in the middle of the night to a McDonald's, right? So, how does your community respond? How do they turn on a dime? It's almost impossible. The commitment that the Border Shelter Coalition has made for this go around is we're watching for those kind of rural situations, and we're going to reach out and offer resources and offer help, send our donations, share resources to make sure that we don't end up with folks getting stranded in these communities or these communities being completely overwhelmed. So I just think that community response is great in Phoenix, but now it really is this expanded network too. And I do think it's a testament to what can be accomplished when we really communicate and work together.
Thank you so much for that. I'm just in awe with the way that the community here works together in efforts to really help folks out. It's just so beautiful. Okay, folks, reminder: you can ask a question on the chat, or you can just simply unmute yourself and ask away. If not, we have some already questions that are being sent into us. So go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. If not, we have some questions that are being asked right now. They're getting sent directly to us.
All right. So I see a question in the chat from Deborah, who says she's worked with No More Deaths, but also knows somebody who has a shelter on the other side of the border. She's overwhelmed, but sticking with it. Is a way we can help them, especially when there's so many waiting to cross? And is this something I can help with from Colorado? Yes, this is a huge need. And Eddie has been really good about connecting to some of these shelters on the other side of the border and driving resources down. It is a difficult and interesting process, as I'm sure he could explain, to get supplies across, but it really is about relationship building. And there are a couple of organizations that actually cross the Arizona border. And so sometimes it can be easier to get resources to them on the Arizona side, such as Kino Border Initiative in Nogales and Frontera Cristo in Douglas. They have shelters on the Mexican side, but they also have offices on the Arizona side. So those are good resources for if you don't have the time or ability to figure out how to get supplies across the border, they can. And also, I strongly recommend reaching out to Eddie about fielding supplies down to the border. There's also a local group here in Phoenix called Refugee Aid that has been running aid down to the border. A lot of our partners have been engaged in that work. So there's definitely ways to do it. Those cross-border alliances are really, really important. And we've all been trying to stay in close communication with them. They are very overwhelmed on the Mexican side, and I don't blame them. It's been a very tricky year for everybody.
Beth, how soon can we start seeing asylum seeker families start to be released into respected cities?
You know, it's an inexact science, but DHS has told us to expect people by the end of January. We don't know how many people really. They've given us some rough estimates, but we're going to be prepared for that time frame. We have started to already notice an increase in folks just in the last few weeks. We were receiving throughout COVID usually 15, 20 people a week. And then last week we received 65. So that gives you an idea of the numbers are increasing pretty considerably. We are seeing a lot more families coming too, which is really great. We really missed having as many kids in the space. The gifts that were provided for the holidays through Juice for Justice and through Lutheran Social Services were wonderful. We had so many kids running around the hallways playing with toys together, and it was just beautiful. I cannot explain how wonderful it was to see all the kids playing together. But we've already started to see that increase. And one thing is that just the nature of asylum is even if the policies haven't changed yet, even if it's not, a restored process yet, folks know that it's becoming more favorable and they start making their way here. And so that is something we're hearing from our Mexican partners as well, is that they're starting to see more folks arriving in anticipation that the process will be restored soon.
Thank you so much. Folks, reminder, go ahead and send your questions on the chat or just go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll be able to answer those. Beth is doing an amazing job of really being thorough with all of our questions here. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and ask some of the questions that are getting typed in from social media. Okay, Beth, we have another question. I am immunocompromised. Is there a way I can help?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a lot of folks at home knitting, making masks has been huge, especially child size masks, because it is much easier for us to source the adult size masks and the child masks. And if it doesn't fit, they just take it off, right? So small child size masks are a hugely important thing, and you can ship them directly to the Welcome Center. We redistribute them out into our community if we have too many of anything. Eddie knows we're constantly like, hey, do you need this? We've got it. So we're happy to be a clearinghouse for that kind of stuff. We also are going to be looking for folks that are Spanish fluent that can help with doing intakes remotely, doing transportation calls remotely. We're looking into ways to make like no contact donation drop offs. There's a lot of things in the works to build up around that. So if you speak Spanish, that's a huge need. And if you don't, we will definitely have donation type needs that we can arrange to be no contact. We're still kind of building out our processes as a community because we're approaching it together, but we're being very mindful of the fact that many folks are not capable of volunteering directly in person at this time.
Thank you. And yeah, I think Deborah just sent me the place on the Mexican side where we can provide assistance to and hopefully help folks out there. What is the plan, Beth, if folks come out COVID positive? What's the plan to help out folks if that happens?
So we're working closely with Maricopa County Department of Health and working to develop a quarantine plan where they'd be able to get access to quarantine services similar to what other folks in Phoenix are already having access to, like a hotel room, a shower, hot food, checkups from medical professionals. That is going to be the best possible plan for these folks, would be to make sure that they get a safe space to quarantine. We have received a couple folks that were positive. Our partners down in Tucson, Casalitas, which is another asylum seeker shelter run by Catholic Social Services, they've received quite a few people that are positive. Their space is set up easier where they can quarantine in place, and our space is not. So we've worked with the county and we've been able to develop some great relationships. They have been really supportive and very mindful of trying to make sure that these folks have safety and that they stay in communication with us to provide their services, but that they're able to quarantine.
Thank you so much. I mean, we're really gonna have a challenge with the pandemic and being able to make sure that folks stay safe.
Mhm.
So I'm really looking forward to getting a vaccine hopefully soon, so that we can really help more and more folks.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we're getting more questions in, so I'm just gonna read. Hopefully, we can answer them in progression. But somebody's asking here: can you dispel some of the myths that asylum-seeking families are criminals coming into this country? Can you give examples, any sort of familiar stories that enlighten your heart?
Oh, absolutely. We honestly, I feel like everybody who does this work carries around a lot of stories that you've tucked away and try not to think about too hard, to be honest, about how hard the journey is for folks before they get here and how hard they're trying to find safety. One of the things that we talk about at the welcome centers, sometimes we'll have folks get released here and they'll run into somebody they met while they were on the journey. And whenever that happens, they run towards each other. They're so excited to see each other. And they always say, I saw you on El Camino. I saw you on the road. And it's this idea like there's one road, and there isn't, right? There's not one road, but it's the concept of the road is such a shared experience. And so we always remind ourselves that when they come here to Phoenix, they're still on the road. We aren't their final stop for safety. They're still trying to get to where their family is. They're still trying to fight their court case. We're just a stop on the road. And so it's really important that we are here not to like take up that space in their story, but to make sure that they can get on safely because they're the hero of that story. Some of the stories we've heard from these families are so difficult. There was a woman who told me how, she and her children were waiting at the border to cross, and a bus pulled up and said, hey, we're from a church and we help Guatemalan asylum seekers, and you can come to our church and get food and someplace to stay. Hop on the bus. So all the Guatemalans got on the bus, they drove out into the desert, and they robbed them all and left them there with their children. Just horrible stories. One of my partners in Texas told me a story about a mother who said that every night when she fell asleep, she would tie one of her shoelaces to one of her daughter's shoes and the other one to her other daughter's shoes. So if anybody tried to take her daughters in the night, she would wake up. Just horrible experiences that they have gone through to try to find safety. We have a really adorable little boy here right now who told me the story about crossing the river and having the water go up to his chin. These journeys are so difficult, and these families, when they share their stories, it's so clear that the only reason that they made such a difficult journey is because they had no choice, because they were fleeing imminent danger, they were fleeing death. Many of them are single mothers fleeing misogynistic violence. Especially if, as their boys get older, a lot of families saying we have to get out because the gangs are already coming after my son, and he's 12, he's 13. We have to leave. They're coming after my daughter. They're trying to figure out how old she is because she's tall for age. We have to leave. These stories are heartbreaking. One thing that is really, I think, a testament to their commitment is that the DOJ, the Department of Justice, keeps track of the statistics of who shows up to their asylum cases. And consistently, more than 98% of asylum seekers show up to their court cases. I don't think that most citizens consistently show up to their court cases and those numbers for even their traffic tickets, right? Let alone a case that is going to determine your entire fate and feel so overwhelming and scary. These folks, that to me, it's really symbolic because these folks come to the border and they pulled out all of the paperwork they have, everything that identifies who they are. Here is my birth certificate. Here is all the paperwork that I have from my country. I want to file my court case. I want to start the asylum process. For anybody to have that much faith in our legal processes, they have to have such a huge amount of belief in this idea of the American dream. This idea that we stand for this promise of like holding the light beside the door, right? The Statue of Liberty, that we will give you a fair shot in court. We will listen to your story and we will offer you safety. And I just feel like it puts such a huge impetus on us to live up to that promise. They trust us so much when they show up and they say, here's everything. I'm going to lay it all out to you and I will tell you my story because I believe you will believe me. There just is no guile to that. They're laying out stories that nobody should ever have to share. And I'm very grateful to be a witness to it. And I'm grateful to the people in this community that said, these folks deserve a warm blanket. They don't deserve a cold shoulder. We can absolutely always do better by welcoming folks who have been through such horrible experiences.
Beth, can you also talk about the first tier vetting that they do through Border Patrol to make sure that these people
Sure.
are not criminals? That might be helpful too.
Totally. Yeah. Border Patrol is the first agency that they encounter. If they cross at the port of entry, then right away, Border Patrol starts processing them. If they cross outside the port of entry, which is also an option for asylum, then they usually sit down right on the other side of the wall and wait for Border Patrol and flag them down. And then Border Patrol goes through their documents. They contact the country they're from. They verify the documents. They verify the parents are the parents of the children. There's a lot of that. That process is all about making sure these people are who they said they were, and they give them an A number which tracks them through their court cases and everything, and then send them to the different communities where they'll get processed through ICE and given a check-in date and released. And they do check-ins, pre-COVID they were doing check-ins often every 2 weeks or every month. During COVID they've been a little more spaced out because ICE is also trying to take COVID precautions, but they're really checking in very frequently throughout their entire case. The dockets have gotten so long that most asylum seekers are in a court process for about a year or more. A lot of them for 2 years now. It's sort of at a stage now where we don't really know how long to expect them to be in court because so many people got pushed back during COVID. We don't know when the dockets will start to catch up. And during that entire time, they're doing check-ins after check-in to make sure that ICE knows where they are. So it really is a very diligent process, and one that we are seeing very high numbers of participation and turnout, and consistent involvement from these families.
Thank you so much. And this really reminds me of the fact that without assistance from communities like ours, people like me wouldn't be here. I know I personally made this journey of migrating with my mom, and we were in a detention center. And if it isn't communities that come together to support like families like mine, like my mom and me, then where would I be? Right? Like, I have the privilege to give back to my community, the privilege to proudly be Jewish, proudly be partake in my Mexican culture, and proudly walk across the streets here in the United States and be able to give back. But it truly trickles down to those of us who were able to help, from giving a toy to providing a toothbrush to giving somebody the honor to be able to brush their hair, to telling somebody that, you know what, throughout everything you've been through, it's gonna be okay. And I remember sitting down with my friend Jen, where a woman was literally showing us the bullet wound that she had and her baby's bullet wound. She was showing us how she survived a shootout. And she was telling me and Jen that all she wants is a chance of hope. And I remember as we were consoling her and we were hugging her, we told her that things were going to get better, and that if there's one chance of hope, she has it here. And that conversation has always stuck with me, of knowing that throughout so much negativity, violence, etc., the little spark of light always seems to gleam through, and it continues to dispel so much darkness, and it continues to create so much change. But it truly takes all of us. It takes all of us in community to be able to step up and help. And even now, Beth, that we truly see that asylum seekers aren't really as talked about in the news. For a long time, they were the main headline for a while, right? And that was when a lot of folks were willing to help. But what about now? Where are we now, where we know that this is going to happen, where we know that we're probably going to get a bunch of folks coming in, and that we can help them safely, and proceed in a way that really ensures that folks aren't just getting dropped off at the street, that folks have a sense of being able to have a shot here in the United States. And I'm really looking forward to a change of administration, because we hopefully will see that the cruelty that a lot of families are seeing and expecting from here is going to stop. I know Jen has personally worked her angel magic to make sure that somebody got their ankle bracelet removed that was there for months, so much so
17
that,
months.
yeah, so much so that their ankle had developed warping, so now is our time and our chance to really us be the creators of the narrative, where we can be the ones who write the journey and bring back the idea that the American dream is a palatable, equitable sense that everybody can have a shot at. that no matter where you're from, if you've been beaten up, persecuted, or hurt, that you have a chance here. And we have the capability of doing that. Not only do we have the resources, we have the people power to do that. We have the ability to be able to support folks, and do it very efficiently, if I might add, very, very efficiently. Whereas if they were freaking out when we got 300 plus people, we would say, bring them on by. We wouldn't take a no for an answer. My grandma, before she passed away, a lot of her wisdom would be passed down to me. And she would always say that if somebody was hungry, we would just add water to the beans to make sure that they had enough to eat. And that's truly what I feel, that our community has evolved to. So a huge thank you again to all of our friends that we gave a shout out to today, to really changing worlds, creating maybe even hundreds more Eddies, like myself, who are able to have the privilege to give back to their community, who have some sort of grasp into this American dream, right? Beth, give us a closing message of hope. Jen, if you want to give us a closing message of hope, and Morgan, if you want to give us a closing message of hope, we would love that.
Yeah, I want to hearken to what you just said. That was so perfect. When Restoration Project was when I first got involved, there was this wonderful woman who founded Restoration Project up here in Phoenix, Cindy Whitmore. Our community lost her to a tragic accident a few years ago. But I remember when we were seeing, 300, 400 people dropped off at the Greyhound station, the news swooped in and they said, tell us about how overwhelmed you are. And she said, no, we are never overwhelmed. Release everybody. Our community will expand. And that has stuck with me always. And she's been right. She's been so proven right that our community will expand. We can help everybody. It's a new challenge. It's more people. Great. We would so much rather they be here, right? So I really take that to heart. And I love that your abuela also shared that same sentiment. We'll just add more water to the soup, right? We'll make it work.
And I would say that if you are touched by any of this, I think it's important that you do whatever you can to get involved. We've got people all over the country that are doing this work. Some people are making love bags that are for the kids to be able to put in their backpacks that have toys and gummy bears and all sorts of things. We've got different ways for you to help wherever you are. And we need the help, This for me has been the most important work I've ever done in my life. And I will never forget the very first man and his son that I met. The man was very shy. And so his teenage son was doing most of the talking and translating, and he would sit there quietly. And after spending all night and the next day with them, I took them to the gate at the airport and said goodbye to the young boy, and the father grabbed my face. Now, he hadn't been speaking to me. He'd been smiling, but not speaking. And he grabbed my face and in perfect English said to me, I love you, lady. His son had taught him what he wanted to say. And that's what this is all about. This is life-altering work. And we would love to have you do it with us.
I just want to take the opportunity to I guess point out and add also that there's always something, and no matter how small it is, there's always something you can do, and sometimes it's the smallest things that make the biggest impact, because like I said before, they pile up and they build on each other and they make things bigger and bigger until you have a huge impact going. So even if you think, I'm just one person, what can I do? Like, you can always do something. So just find that one thing that you can do and give that, give that over to the community.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Huge shout out to those of you who are joining us on the Zoom and those of you who are watching. Thank you for sharing a little bit of time with us in our advocacy. Just as we consistently bring in Shabbat in our Judaism, we're going to consistently bring in our advocacy, making sure that folks have a shot at an equitable society that works for all of us, that truly works for all of us. Thank you. I see that my friend Rosetta is here. A huge shout out to her, our great friend in the Native community, Rosetta, who always shows her great support to our work. Everybody have an amazing day. We appreciate y'all's support. Thank you so much, Beth and the IRC, for the continuous work, and all the community partners who come together to ensure that more than 40,000 asylum seekers had a chance, that 40,000 families and people like me had an opportunity to have a chance here. Everybody have an amazing day. Take care. Happy New Year. We'll see you soon. Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take
Bye.